The LA Kings lose a tough game to the Boston Bruins, and the failure on the team's power play is a key reason why. It is time to consider all options at this point. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that recaps the night in the NHL. And I'm a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, the LA Kings played game number 22 of the NHL season, game one of a stretch of games where they're going to play 6 of 7 at home. Kings were hoping to take some of the momentum from their recent 6-game road trip in which they went 4-1-1 into this stretch of home games because they haven't been good at home so far this year. Unfortunately, the Kings end up losing a tough one to the Boston Bruins, 2-1 in overtime, and remain with just one home win in 8 home games so far this season. Quick check of the game stats saw the Kings lose 2-1 in overtime. Shots on goal favored LA 32-26. Power play, Kings were 0-5 while Boston was 0-2. Faceoffs dominated by the Kings, winning 61.8% of the Bruins 38.2%. Hits favored Boston 28-12. Block shots favored the Bruins 23-12. So the big takeaway from this one, I will say I thought the Kings played very hard in a very hard game. This game was a grind. This was a rock fight. Was it the cleanest game ever played? No. Was it the prettiest game ever played? No, definitely not. But I do not fault the effort the LA Kings gave against the Boston Bruins. However, the execution is a problem. And the way the Kings played in overtime was a problem. And the power play remains the biggest problem. As I mentioned, the Kings were 0-5 on the power play, and that included a 2-man advantage in the first period for over 2 minutes. Now, because it hasn't necessarily looked terrible, the power play, in terms of the Kings doing a lot of right things, winning faceoffs to get it set up quickly, puck movement, zone time, I understand the idea that the Kings may have when they're saying, all right, it's close. Let's just keep plugging away. And eventually it's going to work itself out. But then there's also the results. And that is really all that matters. There's no style points when it comes to having a good power play. Either the power play is effective and puts the puck in the net or it doesn't. The Kings are now 1-for-19 with the man advantage over their last 6 games, 0-for-9 in their last 2 games, and both of those games were 1-goal losses, or in the case of the Sharks game, a shootout loss, and then the overtime loss against Boston. Surprisingly, the Kings' record in those 6 games is a respectable 3-1-2, even with the power play struggles, but it also goes to show you that if the Kings had a decent power play, what would their record be in that case? But this last game, to me, was the toughest. And I have finally gotten to the point where I actually wish the Kings wouldn't get a power play. I was at the point where I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to go into it expecting they're not going to score. And if they score, I'll be pleasantly surprised and happy. But if they don't score, I won't be upset. I'll just be like, okay. But that's quickly gone away. And it's gone to frustration every time the Kings get a power play because I have no confidence that they're going to score. And I know I said in our last episode that we were going to have to all be a little patient with this to give Andrei Kuzmenko and company time to see if they can get that number 1 power play unit going. Well, it took an 0-for-5 on the power play and a 1-goal overtime loss for me to lose my patience. It feels like this power play just sucks the life out of the team. It definitely sucks the life out of the home crowd. And it just has to be so frustrating for the players to work hard, to draw penalties, and then not punish your opponent for breaking the rules. So the question is 2 games enough of a sample size to already say we need to change it again? Like I said, it hasn't looked terrible, but the results are the results. 0 for 9 in 2 games on the power play and both 1-goal losses. So what can be done, what should be done? I've mentioned this before. I do think the Drew Doughty injury is complicating things right now, because if Drew Doughty was healthy, it would be very easy to just split him up and Brandt Clark up and have those 2 guys run the two power play units. But that's not an option right now, and it's not going to be an option for the Kings for about a month. Now, I personally would be fine in giving Brandt Clark the opportunity to run the top power play unit. I don't know who would run the second power play unit. I mean, Joel Edmondson does have a big point shot, but he's not very mobile. Brian Dumoulin's a bit more mobile, but he doesn't have a shot that I've seen. So there's not a great option at this point. But when you take into account the results of what has been going on with the power play, it can't be any worse, right? I guess, unless they're giving up shorthanded goals right and left. But I don't know that it matters, because I'm not confident that Jim Hiller would put Brandt Clark on the number 1 power play unit. Now, I will give Hiller some credit. He said a few games back that Brandt Clark needed to get more ice time, and he has been getting more ice time. So maybe he'll come around to that idea. Maybe the desperate times call for desperate measures, even though that isn't really that desperate for me, but maybe for Jim Hiller it is. But I think that with Drew Doughty out, it's kind of the perfect opportunity to give Brandt Clark a look right into the Kings' number 1 power play. As for what head coach Jim Hiller had to say after this loss to the Bruins about that struggling power play, he said, quote, "Well, I think the power play has struggled in general, so I'm not going to single one guy out, but I think the group of 5 of them currently are not getting it done as constructed. We've talked about it a few times, so it's something we're thinking about, and it doesn't look good. It's cost us games. So when you get to that point, at some point, you might have to make some changes." End quote. Yeah, I think so. I think you might have to make some changes. Now, while the power play is the most glaring problem, I do have to also ask, what the hell is going on with the Kings in overtime? They were flat out awful in overtime in the game against the Sharks, and they weren't much better in the game against the Bruins. Just looking at it, the Kings started out the overtime against Boston with what I thought was the best trio of players they could put out there: Quentin Byfield, Adrian Kempe, Brandt Clark. And nothing really went right in overtime for the Kings. And even when they made a good play, it didn't work out. For example, Adrian Kempe stole the puck early on in overtime to get an all-important possession, but when he passed it back to Brandt Clark, the Bruins deflected it away, and it led to a breakaway opportunity. Thankfully, the Boston player lost control of the puck and didn't score. Not long after that, Alex Laferriere comes onto the ice. He skates it into the Boston end, and he just falls down, gives up a possession, and possessions are so important in overtime. Kevin Fiala later stole the puck from Boston, but then he skates it dangerously through the Kings' crease, ends up losing possession. And then Darcy Kemper later had the puck covered, but decided to keep playing it, which is not the wrong call if you can play it to your teammate. But he turned it over. Kings couldn't make a line change, and then moments later, game-winning goal is scored. So there were very few moments where the Kings had possession in overtime, and when they did have it, it was never anything positive, and the Kings never got a shot on goal in overtime. And that's 2 games in a row now where the Kings played overtime, and they got 0 shots on goal. So clearly this is something the Kings are going to have to address. It hasn't been an issue to this point, but the last 2 games have been so bad, and the Kings are playing a ton of these types of games. They've got 10 games this season where the game has been decided in overtime or a shootout. So it's something they're going to have to talk about, figure out. Kings are 4-2-4 in those 10 games that have gone beyond overtime. And as hard as the Kings played overall in this game, I did want to point out I didn't like the start for the Kings. And I get that they were playing on back-to-back nights, but you're back home, you're starting a big homestand. You've been away for a while, the crowd's there, they're excited, and they just didn't have energy to start the game. Thankfully, they got it as the game went along, but at the beginning of the game, they were pinned in their own end for most of the game, and it kind of set the tone for the first period. So not the start you wanted when you're back on home ice, and the Kings now fall to 10-6-6 overall, 1-4-3 on home ice. Why are the Kings so bad at home this season after being the best home team in the NHL last year, after setting a team record for home wins? It is a mystery, but it is something the Kings are going to have to get corrected soon, especially on this long stretch of home games. Now, with the Kings power play struggling, thankfully, the Kings penalty kill has been a strength, and Joel Armia is leading the way. We will get into that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, and smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can maximize investments, increase your savings rate, easily refinances with your partner or your financial advisor, while keeping a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, let's get into some of the individual performances for the Kings in their tough 2-1 overtime loss. And the Kings actually had a couple of lineup changes on the back end. The forward lines were all the same from the previous game. Quentin Byfield and Kevin Fiala with Adrian Kempe on the top line. Andrei Kopitar with Trevor Moore and Andrei Kuzmenko on the second line. Philip Deneau with Warren Fogle and Alex Laferriere on the third line. And Alex Turcotte with Joel Armia and Corey Perry on the fourth line. However, defensively, they changed things up a bit. Joel Edmondson played on the top pairing with Mikey Anderson, and after one game on the top pairing on the right side, Brian Dumoulin was put on the second pairing on the left side with Brandt Clark, and that third pairing stayed the same with Jacob Moverara and Cody Ceci. And the explanation was that they wanted to match up Joel Edmondson and Mikey Anderson against the David Pastrnak line. So that's why they changed it. I assume that won't be the case going forward, but who knows? We'll see. We're going to start with Darcy Kemper, though, in this one. And the Kings goalie allowed 2 goals on 26 shots. Typically, that is good enough to get you 2 points, but unfortunately not in this game. And while Kemper, I thought, was solid again, I thought the 2 goals he did allow were of the stoppable variety. Now, he did make a lot of other quality saves throughout the game. And I will say that the player that scored both of the goals for Boston, Morgan Geekie, is just having an otherworldly season right now. He is tied for the NHL lead in goal scoring with 16. Morgan Geekie, good player, but lead the NHL in goals, good player? I don't know about that, but he's obviously beaten a lot of goalies this season. Now, you likely know if you've watched this show for any length of time, I'm not a big analytics guy, but there is one stat I am starting to get interested in because I think it's very important, and that's high danger opportunities, or in the case of a goalie, high danger saves. Now, according to naturalstattrick.com, Darcy Kemper was 6 for 6 in high danger saves against Boston. Unfortunately, the 2 goals that he listed or that he let in were listed as a mid-danger goal and a low-danger goal. So again, like I said, even not looking at those analytics, I thought that those were stoppable shots, even though he did have overall a good game, and just allowing 2 goals, overtime, in extra time. I mean, that's still a good game by pretty much all accounts. But I will say this about Darcy Kemper. There are things I'm worried about with the LA Kings. Darcy Kemper is not one of them. With the loss, though, he falls to 7-4-4 on the season. Joel Armia continues to be very good for the Kings, much better than I ever thought he would be. And he scored the Kings' only goal in this one, shorthanded. Trevor Moore stole the puck in the Kings' end, took off down the ice. Armia joined him for a 2-on-1. Moore took the shot. Save was made, but Armia was there to put in the rebound. His second straight game with a shorthanded goal, his third shorthanded goal of the season, and that leads the NHL. The Kings are also tied now with the New York Islanders with 5 total shorthanded goals this season. So while the power play has been an issue, at least the penalty kill has really turned into a solid part of the Kings' strategy, a solid part of their team. And Joel Armia has been a big reason why. Andrei Kuzmenko, no points in this game. He has no points in his first 2 games back after being a healthy scratch for a few games. He played 17 minutes against Boston, which was a few more minutes than he played in the previous game against San Jose. He was a -1 against the Bruins. He did not have a shot on goal. And again, I don't know if it's the situation with the power play, but with Andrei Kuzmenko, they're going to have to stick it out a little bit longer and see if they can get him going. I did want to talk about the Byfield, Fiala, and Kempe line. And I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it until they prove me otherwise. In theory, this line looks like it should be great, but so far it just hasn't. Now, it hasn't been bad, but you would think it would be better than it has been. And I'm all for giving this line more time to see if it can be better. But so far through 2 games, none of the 3 players have a point, 5-on-5, and they just don't look dangerous. The talent on that line is good enough to me that they should get, I would say, at least 3 quality scoring chances per game. Again, back to the analytics and the high danger chances, according to Natural Stat Trick. At 5-on-5 in the game against the Bruins, Kempe, Byfield, and Fiala combined for 0 high danger chances. The 3 of them combined for 5 shots on goal. Kevin Fiala had no shots on goal in this game. That is very un-Kevin Fiala-like. Did want to mention the defense because we talked about it earlier on the changes. Joel Edmondson was an even player on the night. He played in 27 shifts. For Brian Dumoulin, he was a +1, had an assist, and had 23 shifts. As far as the ice time, Brant Clark once again led the Kings defense in ice time, 21 minutes, 59 seconds. Joel Edmondson was second with 20 minutes and 39 seconds. Mikey Anderson, third, 19 minutes, 41 seconds. Brian Dumoulin, fourth with 19 minutes and 24 seconds. Then you had Cody Ceci, 16 minutes, 36 seconds, and Jacob Moverar was 9 minutes and 54 seconds of ice time in this loss to Boston. Andrei Kopitar, the captain, did not have a point, so still at 1,290 and still 18 points away from passing Marcel Dion to become the LA Kings all-time leading scorer. Checking some other stats in this one, individual stats. Told you Joel Armia had the only goal shorthanded. Trevor Moore and Brian Dumoulin with the assists. Andrei Kopitar and Philip Deneau led the team in shots on goal. They each had 4. Kempe, Edmondson, and Moverar each had 2 blocked shots. Adrian Kempe had 3 hits to lead the team. Brant Clark led the Kings in time on ice, 21 minutes, 59 seconds, and Quinton Byfield was the best King in the faceoff circle, winning 7 of 10 faceoffs. Who is the LA Kings quarter season MVP? We'll discuss that next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard them all before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms or in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to moments that matter. So visit Rugiet.com, Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL, and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use the code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. And the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel. It is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game, it doesn't really matter. You can place live bets at any point of the game, beginning, middle, stretch, run. Whether you want to bet on your favorite team or any other team, doesn't really matter. And you can bet on anything you want, like players scoring the next bucket, how many points in total they'll score. It could be by quarter, at the half, for the game. And you can combine your live bets into a same game parlay, player over-unders, total points, which team is going to win. Combine it all, and if they all hit, you get a bigger payout. You can bet on your favorite team, or you can bet on other teams too. It turns any game into an exciting game, regardless of the score. You can, again, place wagers on point totals, over-unders, and if the game is a buzzer beater or a 20-point blowout, doesn't matter, because FanDuel makes every game exciting no matter the outcome. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, $300 in bonus bets by hitting your first $5 bet. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the LA Kings are now 22 games into an 82-game season. I did see several outlets put out their quarter season rankings and their quarter season MVPs for each team. And this was put out a couple days ago, so it doesn't include the Bruins game. I did see that NHL.com had the Kings ranked 11th in the NHL, and they had Darcy Kemper as the Kings MVP. ESPN also had the Kings ranked 11th in the NHL at the quarter mark of the season. They had Adrian Kempe as the Kings MVP. I would say Kempe and Kemper are both very strong picks. I don't have a big disagreement with either of those choices, but they wouldn't be my choice. If I was picking the Kings quarter season MVP, believe it or not, I'd go with Corey Perry. And I'm not sure if that's controversial or not. And I know he hasn't played the entire season, and he has cooled off a bit of late. But the Kings didn't start playing Kings hockey until Corey Perry started his season. The team before the game against Boston had a 9-3-3 record with Corey Perry in the lineup, and they were 1-2-3 without him. So, like in terms of points, if you look at the Kings going into that Boston game, they were 10th in the NHL in points. And if you were asking me where I would have ranked the Kings before this game against Boston, I think I would have had them around 12th best in the NHL. So Kings, a decent start to the NHL season as far as where they are 20-ish games in. But it could obviously be better. We always feel like things could be better. But hopefully they can get the power play going, and that can help them to be a better team on home ice and a better team overall. I did see a clip on social media from the Spittin' Chicklets podcast, and they were talking glowingly about Adrian Kempe and what a bargain deal the Kings got him at. They were talking about him taking over as captain next season, or maybe Quentin Byfield. And we've talked about this a little bit, and I've said I'm very confident that Drew Doughty will be the next captain of the LA Kings. Now, yes, next year is the final year of his contract, and who knows what might happen after next season, but I'm very confident Drew Doughty will be the next captain of the LA Kings. I did a show, I think it was last week, where I kind of talked about the off season for the Kings and kind of their priorities. I talked about Brandt Clarke being the next big signing for the Kings coming up. And I didn't really mention Drew Doughty. And obviously he's going to be going into the final year of his contract next year. He's obviously going to have to take a pay cut from the $11 million a season he's been making over the last 8 years. That's coming to an end after next season. Now, how much of a cut he's going to take and how short of a deal will be interesting. I certainly think Drew Doughty loves LA. I think he looks at other players that he played with and respected, like Dustin Brown and Anze Kopitar, and how they played their entire careers as LA Kings. I don't know how much of a hometown discount Drew Doughty will give the Kings. We did see Ken Holland play a little bit of hardball with Adrian Kempe, and Kempe did take a bit less than he could have gotten out there on the open market, which I think is pretty awesome of Adrian Kempe, frankly. But I think Drew Doughty could get a similar deal to what Anze Kopitar's last contract was. Now, that was 2 years, $7 million per season. I think Drew Doughty still has something left in the tank for sure. Clearly, he still has a passion for the game. I could see Drew Doughty getting like a 3-year deal, which would take him to 38 years old, which is the same age that Anze Kopitar is this season. But Drew Doughty will be the captain of the LA Kings. I don't have any doubt about that. Now, maybe Adrian Kempe at some point will be, but it won't be replacing or following Anze Kopitar, in my opinion. I think definitely Drew Doughty is going to be that person. All right, so the LA Kings did pick up a point with that tough loss to Boston. By the way, I hate it when people call it the loser point, but I mean, you can call it whatever you want. The Kings came into the night. They were holding a wild card spot in the West, and thanks to that 1 point, the Kings are now in third place in the Pacific. They're tied with Vegas in points, but they have played 2 more games than the Golden Knights, so there is that. And the Boston Bruins, by the way, they're leading the Atlantic Division now, thanks to those 2 points against the LA Kings. So what is next for the Kings? Actually, the Kings have the weekend off, a rare weekend off for LA, but they will be in action next Monday, or this coming Monday, when they host the Ottawa Senators. Hey, thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listens today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL or YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For you everydayers, those that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, I will be putting out a bonus episode this weekend, and that will be our weekly fan feedback show. If you want to get an email in for that, there is still some time, but I would do it quickly. LockedOnEddie@gmail.com is the email address to send your questions, EDDIE. And you're always welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We'd love for you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.